Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at elitesportsbetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to be talking a little NBA basketball. Our man Paulie's having some technical difficulties today, so me and Frank are going to hold you guys down, go through this pretty nice 9-game slate that we have here today. So, Frank, what's going on this morning, bro?
Other man, I like to pride myself on the things that I do. I like to be knowledgeable about them, whether it's working out, the beer I like, whatever. I got this coffee, and I'm like, I like dark beer. I don't know what kind of coffee I like. Every time I'm at the store, I'm just guessing. So I started to pay attention, and I was like, so I must like dark coffee, right? It's rough. It's rough. It's definitely for like some 80-year-old dudes that can't taste stuff anymore.
Yeah, so my wife and I have this discussion all the time, actually, which is pretty funny because like I don't like the taste of coffee, but I like the caffeine that coffee gives me to
Sure.
wake me up. So I'm more of like when we go to Starbucks, I get like the blonde espresso. It's more like it's like the sweeter, the lighter roast, the sweeter
Right,
kind.
right.
She likes the taste of coffee. So like she wants like dark roast, like Italian, like hardcore, like just like my coffee tastes like coffee. Like me, I drink like, I'm a pussy. I drink lattes and shit like that. Like I need some milk in there. I need something to cut to taste the
I
coffee.
think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know. I thought I would really like the dark stuff, but it is like zesty. So
Yeah. I'm not, like I said, I like the caffeine boost I get from coffee, but I don't actually like the taste of coffee. So for me, the lighter stuff works out well because I get my caffeine and I don't feel like I'm like forcing myself to drink it. My
yeah,
wife, on the other hand, like when she brews a cup of coffee, like you can smell. My neighbors are like, "Oh shit, you guys are having coffee this morning!" Like you can smell that shit a mile away. So
sure.
each his own. I mean, everybody finds their niche and finds what's good for you, and it's kind of the way we do it with the sports betting here as well. We got guys like you who will deal with a lot more of the totals. We got guys like Paulie who do a lot more of the in game. We got guys like me who just kind of find whatever little advantages I can and try to take advantage of them. And you know what? That's the variety is the spice of life. So that's not a bad thing.
Yep, yep.
All right, so we got a nice little slate here today. We got 9 games to talk about. We'll go through them a little bit faster since it's just the two of us here today. So we'll start right at the top with Brooklyn and Washington. Big number in this game, going to be a lot of fun for daily fantasy. I'm looking at a 235 total here with Washington as oh no, I'm sorry, Brooklyn as a 1.5 point favorite in this one. What are you looking at in this game?
So a couple injuries here. So up front, I'm not going to have any place on this game until the injuries news comes out. Chandler's questionable and Bertans questionable. Brian is back. So with I think I'm pronouncing that right, Bertans. He's
Yeah, but you know what's funny? You never go to those websites where you put in somebody's name to see how you pronounce it. You can go to 5 different websites and get 5 different pronounces of
for,
his name, like
for
pronouncements of his name. Yeah,
Bertans.
yeah, Bertans, Bertans, whatever. But I say it with the French accent. He's
Yeah.
European. That's the way to go. So Bertans is good with me.
Yeah, so he kind of controls the pace. So I'm gonna be careful there. I'm definitely gonna have to adjust pace whether he's in or out. The game currently is listed at 235. I have it at 233 and a half.
Okay.
But yeah, nothing here for me just because of those two injuries, mostly with guys being questionable. I have liked Washington. It's hard to say, depending on who's playing, but I have the game around Pick'em, so I could like Washington as well. Um, that might be the safer play right now if you really wanted to play this game for some reason.
Yeah. Now I'm seeing 1.5s, a couple twos in the market. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, I see 2.5 in some spots on
Okay.
Chris, 2.5, 2.5 at Bovada, two everywhere else. I'm sure there's 1.5s out there depending on where you're looking. But yeah, I have the game more at Pick'em, but I'm not gonna play it until I know what's going on.
All right. So maybe a little bit of edge there on Washington, and we'll wait a little bit and see where that takes us from there.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one we got Philly and Cleveland. Philly 7.5 point favorite at the open, 220 total. Totals come down a little bit in spots. I'm seeing some 217.5s and 218s in the market, so that's a big drop actually, a little bit there, 2 or 3 points. As far as injury news in this game, I mean Ben Simmons is out. It looks like Tobias Harris is going to be back in. That's really the only big injury news I'm seeing. Anything else you're seeing there?
Yeah, just Simmons, McKinney, and Exum, the big names for me in my model that are going to be out of this one. It lends itself to the under. I believe we talked about this last time with Simmons being out on the last episode on Monday. We played the under with Philly before, and we're going to play him again. Simmons, people look at him like he's terrible offensively. He's not. He's above average, in the NBA from the offensive side. The reason for that, he can't shoot, sure, but he gets to the basket, he gets to the free throw line, and he creates opportunities for other players. So he's quite a good, offensive efficiency guy. He's just like a really worse shooting LeBron in a way, right?
Mhm.
So Simmons, not to say that he's LeBron, but he has quite an effect on the pace of the game and the offensive efficiency. And point guards don't particularly have a ton of ability from a defensive side, solely on the defensive side, to affect the point spread that much. It's what they do offensively and what they do from a pace perspective of ball handling affects the game way more. If you look at Simmons, even if you look at the last game they played, they slowed down by about half a second per possession. So even if they are getting worse defense and even if they are getting slightly better offensive efficiency from the bench guys, which they're really not, they're getting worse defense, they're not getting better offense. That pace difference is way more important than the efficiency difference. So I really like the under here. We played at 218. I would have played it down to 217 and a half. It's sitting out there at 217. There's some 217 and a half still hanging out there. So if you were going to play, I think you could get it there. It was as high as 219, 219 and a half. I think even saw some 220s this morning.
Yeah, the open on 220. So, I mean, it is starting to move in that direction for the under already. But you'd still be good over 217 and a half? You'd still be good playing it?
Under 217 and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what I mean. Like, if you can get it at 217 and a half or 218, I'm saying.
That's the worst number I would play. Now, like, we're recording this morning. I played 218. It's come down in the last, probably 10 or 15 minutes. So you could see some buyback. You could see some 218 get back out there. So if you can get it, go get it later on in the day. If you can't get it yet, just monitor that a little bit.
All right, fair enough. I like that one. Put a little check mark there. All right, so next game we talk about New York Knicks, Charlotte Hornets here. Hornets on the back-to-back after getting blown out by Indiana last night. Devontae Graham sat out last night. It was a very weird press conference. I don't know if you saw that. The coach basically came out beforehand and said he's available, but we're worried about the minutes he played, so we're going to kind of sit him. And, that kind of leads me to believe that he's probably going to play tonight. But they still have him listed as questionable. So just kind of keep that in mind while you're looking through it. For the Knicks, we kind of have it in the other direction. Elf Payton missed the last game. Dennis Smith Jr. got the start at the point. It looks like Elf Payton's going to be back here, which moves Dennis Smith Jr. back to the bench. Other than that, not too much else in terms of injury news. That's anything new that, that I'm seeing here. What are you looking at here with this Knicks and Hornets game?
Nothing. This time of the year, I don't really want to bet on either of these teams. I do like Charlotte a little bit. I got them as a 1-point dog here, but I'm not going to play that. Not after last night. Not after everything that's going on. We're kind of like you said, kind of guessing on the rotation a little bit. They lost by about 1 million points, so they're giving up, and I don't really have any interest in that. 208 and a half for the total for me, but I see some 208s, 207 and a halfs out there. But again, not something that I really want to get involved with, not with what Charlotte's doing here.
Yeah, pretty much on market. 207, 208 is the totals I'm seeing around there. And,
at this time of the year, if I'm forced, if I can avoid overs on these terrible teams that don't want to score points, then I'm going to just avoid them. Now, if I had an underplay, like with the Cleveland, I'll gladly play the under, in that Philly-Cleveland game, even though it has nothing to do with Cleveland from my model side. But if that was like a big overplay, for example, I would maybe be a little bit more hesitant this time of year for that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this yesterday on the Daily Fantasy live stream as well on EliteFantasy.com, where we're starting to hit that. We got about a month left in the season, so we're starting to hit that point where, some teams don't give a crap anymore because they're already out of it. Other teams that
those lotto balls, man.
Yeah, other teams that have already, kind of clinched playoffs are going to start sitting guys out. So it's going to be a little bit choppy for the next month in NBA here because you're going to get a lot more late breaking news one way or the other that could kind of swing some of these things. And, not always the greatest situation when we get there. All right, so next game, Orlando against Atlanta. The Magic 3-point favorites on the road at the Open, 227 total. I'm actually seeing that drop a little bit already. Looking at some 2s and 2.5s out there in the market. And I'm also seeing the total going up a little bit here, up to 229, 228.5 in some spots as well. So small moves, nothing huge, but definitely something we have to talk about. Doesn't look like there's any major news here that I'm seeing for guys being out here today in this Orlando-Atlanta game. At least no new news, not anything that we haven't seen most of the season.
Yeah, Clark's questionable and Hunter and Dedmon are probable, so nothing significant. I really don't care about those guys in general from a point spread, really, or pace perspective at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did play over here, so I still like the number where it's at, 229. I see 229 pretty much across the board. For some reason, I'm seeing a jump up at 5 times to 231. I don't know if that's a misread or something. But I've got the game listed at 232 for me. So I would play it all the way up to 231. The reason for that, this is kind of like a gross game like we were talking about, but Atlanta's not giving up. If anything, they're getting better in a weird way.
Sure.
They're running it under 13 seconds per possession, which is over the last week, which is just an absurd number. Even more absurd is Atlanta is 25th this year in offensive efficiency, but over that span of running at super fast pace, they're 10th in the NBA over that span in offensive efficiency. So it seems like maybe, and this is where I talked about weeks and weeks ago about how even just that small sample of 1 week, we can learn a little bit about what a team's doing and what they're trying to do, especially from an offensive side. Coaches try different things throughout the year. Generally, beginning of the year, we see teams go really fast, and then they realize they can't handle an efficient offense and defense that way, or they gas out. And then they, as the season goes on, they tend to come down. Now with Atlanta, it seems like they've decided they're going to pace up. Now that may not change, may not stay that way, but for right now, they've been extremely efficient. And why not keep going, right? So that's kind of why I make that adjustment over those short spans. So I do like the over here at 229, still where it is. You could see some buyback again, generally that's what we see in these big changes. But I would still play it up to 231.
That's actually an interesting thought, because if you look at what Atlanta's done this year as well, John Collins, remember, was suspended after the first week of the season or so for the steroid thing, and he missed 50 games, him being a major part of what they're doing lately. I mean, he's putting up, big double-doubles basically every night, 20 to 12 kind of stuff. They got Cam Reddish, who's kind of starting to, come into his own. Hunter, another young player who's coming into his own. I mean, even Trae Young is really only in his second year in the league, so another young player is coming into his own. And then they went out and they reacquired Dedmon, who was their center last year, and got rid of, the dead weight that they had down there with guys like Alex Len and Bruno Fernando, who are slower type players, guys that aren't really able to get up and down the floor. Dedmon's a little more athletic, so maybe all that stuff mixed in together is one of the reasons why they're kind of bucking the trend there. But like you said, when you notice it and you see that it's happening, we can take advantage of it with the numbers. And I think Vegas kind of agrees, because most of this opened at 227. I'm seeing 229. I just looked at FanDuel and DraftKings while you were talking. They both have it at 229 already, and I wouldn't doubt if it touches 230 by the end of the day. So you had it at 232, you said?
Yeah, I have it to 231.8 for my average, point spread there. So, or point total. I've been betting these Atlanta overs for the last probably 2 weeks at least. And at beginning of the year, we were betting them a lot, and then kind of slowed down, and Trae was kind of in and out. And now we're betting them again. So the other thing to remember about this Atlanta team is they also got Capella, along the way. And, he's not playing right now, but I mean, this team's kind of could be decent in the next few years. So
especially they got all those young guys under contract from the draft, so they're going to have some money to spend too. They could still go out and get another piece or two.
You would think, and I would bet a lot of guys, maybe not the top of the world players, but I would bet a lot of guys would love to play with Trae Young and Capella and those guys. So that's kind of half the battle, right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a team that you can find some next couple year futures for them out there somewhere. Somebody who is definitely looking a little brighter here in Atlanta. I think they did a good job rebuilding that team there. So let's move on to the next game here. We got Dallas and San Antonio. Dallas favored by 5 here, 227.5 total is what it opened at. I'm actually seeing that up a little higher, 229s, 230s, even a 231 out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
The big news here is LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be out for this game, which is obviously a major thing. It looks like Jalen Brunson's not going to be playing on the other side, also a major piece for Dallas. So we got a couple guys that are missing that are going to change things a little bit here. What are you looking at here for this Dallas and San Antonio game?
Cauley Stein's question was, I'm not. This game's kind of been opening late. I'm guessing because of Aldridge. So it's just kind of opening up now as we're recording here. But I've got it to 31.5. I do lean towards playing San Antonio here. I don't particularly know why. It's not something I really want to do, but I'm kind of going to wait and see if that opens up a little bit more and where that goes. So like I've talked about before, my sources are kind of a little bit everywhere on San Antonio. They're really up and down. Their pace has changed a lot, up and down, kind of a roller coaster team here. So I'm going to kind of wait and see if I can get a better number. And if it moves in my direction, then that's okay too if I don't get down on a San Antonio side here. I mean, NBA sides this time of year are tough to kind of be very ahead of the market with anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, we've noticed this over the last couple of days too, is you've been seeing a lot of big numbers coming out, like a lot of games with -8, -10, -12, and 14 even on some.
I mean, a 5-point dog on the road is pretty significant, right? So, yeah, it's hard to.
They're at home, you're saying, right? Aren't they home, San Antonio today?
Well, that's right. That's what I mean. Dallas being 5-point favorite on the road.
Yeah.
Is pretty significant. So, yeah, I mean, if I had to play something, I would play the +5, I guess, but. I don't really want to. I'm personal kind of, interjection here on that game.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mindset. It's like without LaMarcus Aldridge, like I know they're home. I know it's the Spurs, but the Spurs haven't been what people have thought of the Spurs being the last couple of years. I mean, all those guys from that big run are basically gone now. I think Patty Mills might be the only one left at this point, and whatever, he's Patty Mills. It's not going to make that much of a difference.
Right.
So let's look at the next game here. We got Minnesota and Miami. Miami, 10-point favorite at home, 228 total. Actually seeing that total move up to around 230 in a bunch of spots here already since the open. Big news here for Minnesota is that Karl-Anthony Towns is out. He's been out for a couple games, so, it is what it is on that side. The Miami side, Tyler Hero's still out, but Jimmy Butler is listed as questionable. It does look like Jimmy Butler is going to play. Which is basically the news that I'm getting now in the way that I kind of broke this game down for fantasy this morning. So Minnesota, Miami, what are you looking at here?
If Butler's in, I'm going to like the over. I think I've liked these Minnesota overs since Russell kind of joined with them. Towns being out kind of stinks because he's so good, from an efficiency side on offense. But, Butler obviously is a big player in the point spread here. So if I could get more definitive news that he's in or out would be good. I'm seeing some money come in on Miami, and even with Butler out, I have it at like a 10-point game. So I would maybe even like Miami as well. With if Butler plays, I'm gonna like them, but probably have the game close to like 13 or something. Which honestly, at this point in the season, I really wouldn't be too afraid to play, to be honest. So I would maybe pick one of those, though, like the over or Miami. I just don't really know yet until I want to get, definitive news on Butler first.
Yeah, this is actually one thing that I've gotten better at, since doing the shows with you as well, because I know that this is something that you always do. When you have a lean like this, how do you decide whether you want to play? What's the thought process between playing the over and playing Miami here? What are the things that you're going to kind of look at when you're doing that?
What do you mean? You mean just like what?
Well, the difference between, if you're going to make a bet on this game because you have, you think that with Butler in, it could go over, but it could also benefit Miami, and you're weighing the two because. Let's face it, no matter who you are, no matter what side, if you're playing with your size bankroll, which is bigger than mine, which is probably bigger than the average sub that we have out there as well, you don't want to be betting both of those things usually at the same time. So how do you decide which is the better way to put the money, whether it be on the on the total or on the spread when you have, a lean like that on both a little bit.
Yeah. So in the terms of playing both, I mean, I've definitely been in situations where I have done it.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll do it, if I've had a good week or something, I'll chase those. But generally, totals are just going to be softer. There's lower limits on them, so there's less money in them.
Okay.
They're more variance, right? So they're harder to predict for not only sports books but sports bettors. It takes less money to move them as well, hence the lower limits. For me, I will take it to the bank that you're always better off playing the total.
Okay.
Unless you have an insanely successful, an insanely efficient model, and you have a bigger edge on the side, you're just going to be better off playing totals. I mean, even if you had a smaller edge on the total side, just because of the market is just going to be weaker. Like nothing beats the closing market, and I can tell you that these totals, we talked about it. All day today, these totals move 2-3 points from the morning. At this point in the NBA season, you're never going to see a side do that without injury news.
True.
So, you maybe see 1 point, like 1.5 at most from a side perspective. So if you have an edge and you have a model, or even if it's just making numbers in your head, and you're just always better off, in my opinion, playing the totals, unless, like I said, you have some insanely efficient model that you think you have a better edge on a certain side than a total. And you can play both. Don't get me wrong. It's just something I don't tend to enjoy doing, especially with Butler being questionable, and at halftime he decides he's not going to play the rest of the game, and then you lose both. I'd rather lose one. I mean, take out the possibility of winning both, of course. But it's just, at this point in the season, if you're chasing NBA sides, it's just going to be tough. You're going to be, trying to swim upstream. I don't think it's a great idea.
And that's why he's the best in the business, folks. There you go. Right. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. We got Memphis and Houston. Houston opened as a 10-point favorite, 234.5 total. The total's already climbed up to 237, and Houston's actually climbed up to an 11-point favorite as well. Couple big guys missing from Memphis here. Jaren Jackson was out last game. A lot of people in daily fantasy will remember this, including me. Used Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark got hurt about 3 minutes into that game, and Gorgie Dang was the guy who wound up picking up the time. Their recent pickup there. So if you're playing daily fantasy tonight, you can bet you're going to see that name on my write-up today. But if you're sports betting it, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, 237 for the total for me, and I like Houston a little bit, but with Gordon questionable, I want to see that. Not that he's a huge determiner for the point spread, but he'll definitely have a small effect on the game. I don't like betting these big spreads anyway. We have played Houston unders lately, which has been a little bit weird for me and my model, who tends to like Houston's efficiency and pace. But it looks like the book kind of, the number now kind of caught up to what we were liking here. It looked like the total has actually gone up a little bit, which I would have agreed with at the time, but I'm not playing anything here anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you got big numbers here on both sides. 11 points on the spread, and then a 237 total, which is up already from 234. So to be honest, if you didn't get in at the beginning, you probably missed a move here at this point, and I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines for this one.
Yep.
Next game, LA Clippers, Phoenix Suns. Clippers 5.5-point favorite at the open, already up to 6 and 6.5 in some spots. 233 was the total at the open. It actually came down a little bit in some spots, 232. Still seeing some 233s out there as well, so not that far down. LA Phoenix, what are you looking at here? It looks like, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like these are two teams that have pretty much everybody healthy now, even though they both had a lot of guys in and out over the last couple weeks.
Yeah, there's no news here, unfortunately. So that it's tough with nothing changes to get an edge here for me. So I've got the game on to 232, and I've got it at 6.5. So I actually bang on the number here. I don't see this number moving much. I've been kind of bang on both these teams for a while because they don't have a whole lot going on. I know George has been in and out, but we know what he's worth, right? Like, so nothing here for me in this game.
Yeah, I don't really have any kind of lean here either. And even in daily fantasy, one of the problems I have is, we were playing a lot of Phoenix big guys when a bunch of those guys were hurt, and we only had two or three of them in the thin rotation. Saric is back, and Baines is back, and Aiton is back. So that kind of went by the wayside. And then even on the Clippers side of it, they picked up Morris, they picked up Jackson, and they haven't really lost anybody from that rotation either. And George is playing, and Kawhi's playing, and everybody's playing. It's just when you
Right.
have all those guys there, it's just there's nothing that's going to change. There's no additional upside. There's nothing you can say, here's the plus or the minus or whatever. So I'm staying away from this one as well. And that brings us to the last game on, one that I'm interested in watching, but probably not interested in having too much fantasy or even betting money on. Boston Celtics going to travel, taking on the Utah Jazz here. Boston is on the tail end of the back-to-back, right? Didn't they play last night?
They did play last night, yes.
Yeah, so Boston on the tail end of a back-to-back here. Utah being a 5-point favorite at home, opened at 4, so moved up a little bit. The total is 220.5, 221. Really hasn't moved since the open from what I'm seeing here. So what are you looking at with Boston, Utah?
Yeah, I like the under here. Walker's doubtful, which is kind of sketchy for me, but obviously didn't play last night. We liked the under last night. Not very good defensively, pretty good offensive player, controls the pace, really pushes it for Boston, and they just don't have anyone else that really does that for them.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna like these unders as long as he's out. I have it lined at 217. So I would play it all the way down to under 218. I'm seeing some 220s and a halves out there. It looked like it opened at 220, I want to say. And some books don't even have this open yet. So as we started here, they just started opening them up. And it looked like some over money came in a little bit, which makes me wonder that if that's a little bit of a head fake by somebody with, a couple $1,000
Mhm.
laying around, that they're going to move it up, and then that way they can play it back on the other side.
Mhm.
We did see Boston last night opened at 229. It just so happened that I had logged on to bet NBA in the morning, and that game had just opened up, and it got bet all the way down to 223.
Mhm.
So if Walker's out, and perhaps that's why the books are a little bit slower to look at this game. Perhaps if Walker's out and they get better news here, we'll see them kind of guard themselves off of that. They're gonna maybe open it. Like if Pinnacle hasn't even opened yet, and that makes you wonder as if they're maybe going to open it way lower, and then all the other books will just copy what they do generally. So it makes me wonder what's the holdup here. But I'm thinking it was because of the big move last night.
Mhm.
Now teams will. I had a much bigger edge last night, and teams will tend to give up more points on the back-to-back. So that could be the reason that I don't have as big of an edge today, but pretty decent edge for this time of the year. So under 220.5. I'm gonna gamble on the Walker doubtful. I tend to trust the doubtful and the probables,
Mhm.
but you could get bitten here if you wait. If you don't wait, just a little disclaimer if you really want to
Yeah.
gamble on that under.
When I broke it down for fantasy this morning, I was actually considering Kemba Walker out because a lot of the news that I was saying looks like he's still going to be out, and they're kind of shooting for this weekend to be the next time they play and for him to be back in uniform. So it does look like he's more likely than not to sit out this game. But again,
They're
I don't
not in
know.
real danger of like losing a position here either. I mean, they got 4 games up on the Heat.
Mhm.
So, I mean, sure, I guess they could catch Toronto. They're a game and a half out with them, but, they're not going to get the number 1 seed. So, the difference between 2 and 3 is important, but is it
Yeah, it's a game
that
7.
important? Like,
Game
it's going to
7.
come down to them having to play at Milwaukee at some point if they get that far. So it's just, I'm not sure, that they want to risk Walker being, in trouble or in jeopardy for any playoff games whatsoever. So
I'd rather play a game 7 in Toronto with Kemba Walker than try to beat them without him for an entire series. So it does make sense.
yeah,
That kind of
right,
there.
right.
And like I said, that is the way that I'm leaning from what I was reading this morning. It looks like he is more likely than not to sit out again here tonight.
Yeah, so that's probably my biggest edge at the moment. So if you're looking at, with the understanding that it's at least a 1% chance that Walker plays, that Kemba Walker plays. So if he doesn't play, that I just think that number should be in like the 217 range, and we might see a big move like we saw 6 or 7 points yesterday around this time. That number started taking off. So if you can get in at 220.5, I would do it personally.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to try to do right now. And you know what? If you get a 4 or 5 point move like we did yesterday too, you could always buy back to the other side, give yourself a little middle, and have some fun tonight. So that'll be the way to go about it.
The middle would have hit last night, funny enough. So
did they? If you had it, see that, and you know what? And that's part of the reason too, probably why the books are slow rolling this morning, because when the middle hits, they get beat up from both sides of it usually. So that's definitely not good for them and not good for their business. So there it is. Anything else you want to add here before we sign off?
No, that's it. Like I said, that's probably my best angle right now. If you trust that Kemba's going to be out, is just going to be that Boston Utah under. You can get all of my picks, and like we say every show, you're probably watching this later on in the day, and you probably missed a lot of the big moves and a lot of the moves that we had already talked about that moved a lot. But in the bet pack, if you get in there in the morning and you sign up on EliteSportsBetting.com, you'll get these plays ahead of time, ahead of the moves, which is the most efficient way to bet on sports, is to beat the moves. Come 10 o'clock when the limits open up, you're going to see these numbers kind of take off. So, watching this later, sure, you might get a little bit worse number. Most of the time, probably 70% of the time, you're going to get it a little bit worse number that's maybe still playable, or it might not be playable. So the best way to kind of get ahead of this stuff is to get in the bet pack in the morning and, get in there before 10 a.m. before these numbers take off.
Yeah, and also another thing, if any of you use Twitter, we have an alerts system that's set up at Elite Alerts is the Twitter account for it. So anytime any of us go in the bet package and change something or put something in or add a play that we like, you'll get, if you're following Elite Alerts, you'll get that alert. So anytime, like Frank sees something in the morning or I see something during the day and I go to www.elitesportsbetting.com and I change, the NBA page or the NFL page or whatever sport we're doing, the alert gets popped out to that Twitter account. So if you see Elite Alerts, Frank has a updated play, you click on it. If you're part of the betting package, it takes you right to that page. It'll tell you what
set your notifications to your phone, or however you receive your news so that you can see, when those stuff goes up right away.
Yeah, and that's honestly the best way to go about doing it. A lot of times I'll be here doing work. I'll get one of the alerts from one of the other guys here. I'll go check out what they're doing. If it was something I was considering already, get that money down, because even with the show, there are times where we do the show, and then by the time we're off the show, whatever line that, we talked about or I wanted to get on, it already moved 1.5 points in the other direction, or, some news came out and it's off the board right now and I'm no longer able to bet on it. And then it comes back at, 3 points higher or lower or something like that. So, part of this game is getting the best number. I actually think that's an even bigger part of the game. Everybody has
the game.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has the same analysis, but getting the right numbers and, giving yourself the best edges that you can, that's really the way to be profitable long term. So for Frank, this is Benny signing off for another episode of The Opening Line at EliteSportsBetting.com.